that some people haven't been able to attend because of technical difficulties. Let me then, at least for those who are here, introduce Raphael, who is currently President and Dean of Sustainable Development at Hesse College, as we all know. This is a college based in Switzerland, an accredited member of Woolf University. Raphael is an adjunct professor in the subject of, firstly, European Union, secondly, sustainability, and thirdly, European comparative politics at MacDonald College Europe campus. He's also a lecturer in political science at Andrássy University, Budapest. So in his overall research, he analyzes the intersection of EU democracy and sustainability. And he will give us today just a glimpse into his research by presenting this paper called The Role of Conditionality in the Relationship Between the EU and the Visegrad Four countries. And beyond the paper, he will also set the context of current debates around the energy crisis in Europe and the outlook for the future. So, Raphael, over to you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for the kind introduction. Also, apologies from my side. We had some technical issues, but I hope we can fix this now with a progressive and good presentation and some good spirit. So, as mentioned, I will tell you something about my research. I would quickly share my screen for everyone. And then I would just kindly ask you to confirm whether or not you can see it. Can you now see it full screen? Yep. This is great.
Perfect.
So as presented, I will talk about my current book chapter, which is now in a review. I hope it will be published at some point in 2023. I will give you just some framework around this book chapter. So there is the Routledge book series, Governance of Sustainability in Europe. So as also mentioned by Stephen, in my research, I'm looking into governance, especially European governance. I'm teaching this as well at Andrássy University. There I have a focus on energy and climate governance, and this suits this book project quite well. And the book title and the bigger framework of the book chapter, which I'm writing, is Making the European Green Deal Work, EU Sustainability Policy Home and Abroad. The editors are Helene Dirhoch and Christina Kurze, and as hoped, that should be published in 2023. Because we are not all political scientists, I wanted to give you a brief background around the topic and how I approach my subject. So here I'm showing you first of all a picture of the flooding which we saw in Central and Eastern Europe around in summer of 2021. And I think these pictures are quite emotional to most of us. There are many natural disasters which are hitting Europe now. Also in summer of 22, we had a lot of forests which were burning because of the heat. We have more and more floodings. So you see, we are struggling with climate change. What I want to point out is most people already know, but not everyone is aware of it, that natural catastrophes are indeed happening for centuries. But the difference from now and the past is that these natural disasters, which are caused by climate change, are man-made. So with industrialization, we have more CO2 in our atmosphere, which leads to the heat in our atmosphere. And coming back to the photo which I shown you, natural disasters like this can happen more and more frequently now. And this is a very bad thing for us, for our future generations. So to stop frequent natural disasters, we need to act. I'm showing you now findings of the IPCC the International Panel for Climate Change, and they are creating solutions for people, for policymakers, for the whole public, also for science. Here I tried to pick some of the most important data because the IPCC report is very big, just like that we are all on the same page, what is happening in Europe and across the world. Some of the key data are that global emissions must peak before 2025 and be reduced by 43% by 2030. What is maybe missing on this slide is our main goal as the European Union is to reach 1.5 degree or 2 degree, it depends on the scenario which we play out, an emission reduction comparable to pre-industrial time. We would be a climate neutral continent, what Ms. von der Leyen, the head of commission, is visioning for us Europeans in the continent. So we have the 2030, we have the 2050 as the probably most important one, but we need this sub aims to reach or be on a realistic path step by step to reach our 2050 aims. What does it mean to reduce emissions? So as the slide is here showing quite powerfully, we don't need any more fossil fuels. So if I can give you an example, in Germany, we have a coal mining region called Visegrad, and maybe some of you saw that. There were a lot of pictures around Visegrad and protesters who obviously wanted to stop new mining, which was caused by the Ukraine, the Russian war in Ukraine, and the conflicting and the energy inflation and the energy crisis which we have. The German government decided to use more coal. There were some compromises made, but bottom line is that according to the protesters, we are now using again fossil fuels, and that should stop. We ideally should go with renewable energy. Some people believe, for example, there are other ways, maybe transitional fossil fuels, nuclear energy, all of them having also side effects and long-term risks for the environment. Anyways, some scientists and some professionals believe this could be not only renewable energy, which is there's substitutions for fossil fuel, maybe also nuclear energy. Anyways, if we want to go with the 2030, maybe also 2040, 2050 aims, we need to invest heavily now into new technologies, into changing our way of life. This is all summed up here with the climate finance, how we can see it. Mentioning technologies, there are some possible thoughts about removing carbon from the atmosphere. But technology alone won't help us. So we need obviously also to change our behavior. You can see it on the bottom right. We need to save energy. We need to drive less, reduce flying, eat plant-based. These are ways every individual can also contribute to this project. I would carefully say that both is needed. Changing our behavior, but we also need to change the systems and the industry which we are using as a society. So for example, chemical industries, coal industries, these are big players on the negotiations table, and they need to joint responsibility. It can't be only the citizen, and obviously the industries have the biggest share in emission building. So this would be the demand from science. But now look how the reality might differ from this demand from scientists. I brought you now a quote by Bill Gates from his most current book. It's called How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, which was published in 2022. And he explains that with the impact which we experienced with COVID-19, you all remember it quite well. Some folks would say we already passed the point of pandemic, when maybe we are post-pandemic, maybe we are at the end of the pandemic. It depends on the definition, but what we can clearly say is we all were restricted in how we live. And I felt that as well. We need to sit at home. Industries and economies were shut down. So that would be kind of like a positive impact, one might say, maybe for the environment. And there was an impact. And I would quote now Bill Gates here. Because economic activities has slowed down so much, the world will emit fewer greenhouse gases this year than last year. As mentioned earlier, the reduction will probably be around 5%. In real terms, that means we will release the equivalent of 48 or 49 billion tons of carbon instead of 51. So if we are now remembering what I was mentioning with our ambitious goals, 2030, 2040, 2050, you see, it's not really a significant amount of tons of carbon, which we saved during that time. So it should be more. Now some people are asking the question, how is it possible? How can we do this? If even we are restricting our lives so much, is there really a chance? This was one of the main points also during the climate summit by the UN in Egypt. Some of the stakeholders were demanding to be honest with people and saying, guys, we can't reach 2050 realistically. That won't work, or other climate targets. On the other side, there's the discussion, should we really take away hope from people? If we are not living with hope, is there a chance actually to change something? So we now are also getting into a normative question. Until now, science, natural science was dominating, but now we need also to maybe consult other sciences, how to proceed in the future. I am a political scientist. I would try to convey some possible solutions which political science would offer in this kind of complex situation. As mentioned, the situation does not look good, to be honest. Facing the reality, we need pioneers. So the European Union, for example, had like a two-way approach. One would be a bit more idealistic, kind of like a heroic pose on the international scene. Let's be a pioneer. We want to be the first climate neutral continent. It would be one side of the coin. The other side of the coin would be, all of you remember, Mr. Donald Trump, former president of the United States, withdrew from the Paris Agreement. That was kind of like a window of opportunity for the European Union to step up in a geopolitical sense, to say we might have a sphere where we can dominate international politics. So either you see it rather idealistic or realistic, the European Union wants to change business. And with the European Green Deal and the initiation of it, we have now several pillars which should be transformed in the next 30 years. Speaking of social, ecological, and economic pillars, we want ideally to have green growth. Is it possible? Who knows? We want to have like a stable, modern economy, which we will most likely achieve by renewable energy. And at the same time, we should leave no one behind. This is the just transition, which you can see on the bottom right of this graph. I give you an example for that, that it's not too theoretical. In Poland, in my other native country, we have a high usage of coal in terms of electricity generation from coal. It's around 85%. So if you can imagine, that's quite a lot. If we now switch in Poland the energy transition in a very fast way from coal to renewable energy, you might be sure that some coal miners, for example, or many coal miners in some regions will lose their jobs. So it's the task of the European Commission to give them a chance, a fighting chance to maybe get compensated, to receive proper education training to get new jobs. Bottom line is we don't leave people behind in the European Union. Some folks say the green agenda is bringing poverty to our citizens within the European Union. This is not the case. This would be disinformation. And there are a lot of mechanisms, such as the just transition mechanism, which I will later mention, to make sure that people are not left behind. Unfortunately, we are receiving a bump with the European Green Deal at the moment. So we kind of had like a difficult start in 2019. A lot of countries were quite skeptical. All right, let's be very idealistic. Let's be the heroes. How will that turn out? I think in around 2020, 21, we had most member states on the same page. Most member states were in the direction of saying, this could be a good thing. We believe in green economy. We believe we can do also economic growth. Let's proceed with this end of war. The reality came now with the Russian aggression war against Ukraine, endangering sovereignty of a free European state in Europe. This is also a big part, not only European Union, we also need to see a safe continent as a whole. By providing support and help to Ukraine to not get a slave by Russian aggression, we had to pay a specific price. Some countries, for example, took it a bit more with courage. Finland had a quite broad history with Russia, and Poland as well. Those countries are leading the charge in a very solidarity approach, but some countries, maybe like Hungary, they see it a bit more skeptical. They are afraid of the future. They are afraid of energy sovereignty, energy security. Germany, for example, my first home country, they got into a big dependency from Russia over the years. You maybe all are reminded of Helmut Kohl and Gerhard Schröder, which were basically building a past dependency for the future governments. So we have now a kind of very complex discourse of emotions, rationality, playing into a very difficult scenario, how we will proceed with our green agenda, also energy security, if we are clearly endangered by losing Russian gas, losing other kind of exports and imports, making sanctions on an aggressor, bringing energy inflation to the European continent. I have a big understanding for this, that we need to pay a price for freedom. Some people do not. We are living in a democracy. We need to find common nominators. It's a very difficult situation we are in. Bottom line for the European Green Deal is we are not sure how to proceed with it. And now, as I will show you on the next slide, maybe I have skipped it. No, it's actually here, but I didn't see it because of the little window here with your faces. I put a BBC article onto the screen, which is showing a nice title: Ukraine war prompts fossil fuel gold rush. As you all remember, the United States at some point in their past, they were having this gold rush, in looking for this kind of resource and being very crazy about it, not in a negative sense, but all the motivation and all the energy went into this project. Now many countries start digging out fossil fuels out of the grave. You might say even Lützerath, which I mentioned in Germany, is now an option again. A country like Germany decides to prolong the duration of nuclear energy and the nuclear energy plants. For many reasons, these political decision makers try to somehow now be on the side of energy security, and at the same time trying to convince people that we can still proceed with the European Green Deal. The idea by the European Union was at that point to say, well, we invent the Repower EU program. The Repower EU program, bottom line is we cut our dependencies from Russia and we build and invest strongly into renewable energy. This is the plan. If we want to go on, I just wanted to point out in the last slide, we had some positive development. Now we had a bump, and obviously that will be probably a cycle of how society will function also in the future. We will have good times, we will have bad times, but how do we really make sure that it won't be a coincidence that we reach those goals? How can we be consequent about reaching those goals? How can we basically set maybe rules for our common society? I would now give you a quote from one of my mentors, Professor Meyer, and I would quote him here. We recently published a booklet, which you will see at the end of the presentation. We had different experts chipping in with their opinions and expertise, and I think he was bringing our problem quite to the point. From history, one could learn that humans have made inconvenient decisions only if the pure existence would threat them. With this in mind, it seems hopeless to expect that 8 billion people, right guys, we are now at 8 billion, that happened this year. Social actors will fundamentally change their behavior in the following decades or centuries. As a consequence, the responsibility of governments and international and civil organizations increases. Developing their strategies, they have to consider all new relevant information about the future of the Earth earned by scientists and practitioners, and they have to establish rules for behavior of all social actors. However, success requires new interaction and intensive cooperation between economists and politicians. So here I would also refer to the beginning that natural sciences, they have the hard truth, but the hard truth often is not enough to bring the wished or desired result. We need other sciences, and we need intensive cooperations and new approaches to older problem. Because if we want to be honest, we are speaking about sustainable development for a long time. If we are thinking about the Brundtland report from 1987, or even very early United Nations summits in the 70s, those people were already telling us that the world is going into the wrong direction. After 50 years, we still struggle with the same issue. So obviously we need new ideas and new approaches also from other sciences to somehow solve this tension between economy and politics. As Professor Meyer was pointing out, we need to set rules. And this is where my book chapter starts. So first of all, I wanted to show you also for the non-political scientists, kind of like the debates which are now circling in Europe. And my book chapter analyzes how the European Union can influence member states. So this is a graph from a book, the book which will be published in 2023, so which I showed you in the beginning. I'm part of this book, and in my book chapter, I'm using the overlying theory, which sounds as follows. There are the logic of consequentialism, instrumental rationality. On the other side, we have the logic of appropriateness, which means normative rationality. These are, if you would translate it, you can use this as governance mechanisms. In the one, you can induce change through manipulating utility calculations. So very kind of like a hard power approach. On the other side, you see the inducing change through socialization and persuasion. So friendly discussions. If we go now into the operationalization level, you will see tools, initiatives, action of the EU, which can be used. So the EU can do, for example, offerings, rewards, imposing sanctions. You can use that also on external level, which we see now with Russia, using conditionality clauses, conditional market access, conditionalities on loans through IEV, and capacity building. So if you even translate it further, how we are doing laws in the European Union, you can come up as a European Union with directives. On the other side, we have dialogues, negotiations, campaigning, discursive practices, and social interaction. So this is rather a trust built approach. So how we influence, this is also part, let's say, from psychology or negotiation tactics. Many people believed in the past that negotiations need to be a zero-sum game. You basically bring your agenda, you push it through, and you basically try to dominate the other partner, which might be still appropriate in some cases. But negotiations changed, and we are seeing that we need to have also a trust-based approach where social actors are talking with each other on eye level and where you make compromises. You won't reach your ultimate goal, but you come to a situation where both of the sides are winning. And this is rather recommendable. In the book, in the book chapter, I'm analyzing a specific case study. The Visegrad countries, the V4 in a very short abbreviation. This is a group of countries, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. Initially, in the 90s, they came together for an increased cooperation for accessing the European Union. They wanted to support each other to achieve a European Union membership. Some people believed, or also some governments, there was like a big discourse to that time, if they will reach the European Union as a destination successfully, they might consider ceasing their existence. Job's done, let's move on. The V4 still believed that after reaching a successful EU membership, there is potentially more to achieve. And they started to develop more policy fields. They are active in migration, infrastructure, energy. And the energy is one of the key points of my analysis. So it makes sense to have a bit a more systematic approach of how the region is constituted in terms of energy usage. By being quite neutral and diplomatic, you could obviously find out some key characteristics. The region as a whole uses a high amount of fossil fuels on the one side, let's say medium amount of nuclear energy on the other side, and renewable energy is kind of like on the bottom of this comparison. Well, this is also not exactly true if you compare the countries very individually. So it would be unfair to compare Poland to, for example, Slovakia, because they are not using as much coal as Poland. It's very hard with 85%. But overall, you can see the common denominator as fossil fuels. If you are looking at nuclear energy, you see, for example, Slovakia is a leading power with nuclear energy. Also, Hungary has a high percentage in nuclear energy. Unfortunately, Russian-made, this is Russian products, Russian engineering with Paksh. You see the differences. In Poland, we don't have nuclear energy at all, but this will be changed. The Poles want to create their first nuclear plant in a very short time from now on. Still, you can make the tendencies and come to this observation, even if it's negotiable, or just like there can be further discourse about this. All right. If we're now seeing the numbers, I wanted to show you data from the World Bank. The data are going in the World Bank until 2015. I don't have newer energy graphs. If one would make the effort to, let's say, check the energy data for each country, I could have maybe made a graph with Excel, but this is a lot of research, and I think the tendencies did not switch significantly. So we are still seeing that Poland is on the bottom if we are looking into oil, gas, and coal, electricity production, led by, on second place by Czech Republic, and then Hungary and Slovak Republic. On the next slide, we can see the electricity production from nuclear energy. So as you see, Poland, nothing, but then the numbers are quite interesting. It's about 30% in the Czech Republic, and in Hungary and the Slovak Republic, even above 50%. And the numbers increased in the meanwhile. The point I try to make here is, if you see the renewable energy, it's on pretty low level. That increased now as well. But for example, in Hungary as well, not too much. The Hungarians, they have a different approach. They want now to invest into nuclear energy first, and renewable energy would be something maybe until 2040. So maybe 10 years later, there is the belief you can basically start off with some systematic change later. And I would be critical with that. I believe if you want change, you need also to bring the investors early into the boat, and not waiting that investors will now invest into nuclear energy or other terms of energy. And in the end, in 10 years, we don't have enough, for example, investors or interested people. But that it would be, again, arguable. The point is here about renewable energy. There is some uncertainty by the European Union that the states have like a real desire to go with renewable energy on the long term. And this reflects also in negotiations and attempts to come to a common nominator. So the three countries, Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary, voted against the 2050 long-term strategy. And I think Slovakia was accepting, doing an exception. So they were not voting in this process. This was kind of very hard for the European Union to take in, because they had this ambitious plans, and they wanted to move on quickly. And the states were not really interested in joining this endeavor, and that led to lack of credibility during climate negotiations in the next 2 years. In 2021, we had an interesting development that the EU's energy taxonomy was changed by the EU Commission, influenced by member states, among others the V4 in France. Why am I mentioning this? France is one of the biggest players in nuclear energy, and they believe that we will reach 2050 goals by using nuclear energy, and this is fine from their perspective. Germany and Germany has a similar perspective on this as I have. Nuclear energy is indeed beneficial for emissions cuts, maybe on a middle term, but there are a lot of uncertainties for sustainability per se. So this energy source is not secure for the future. This was proven by several scientists. It is a harm to environment. Now you can make the trade-off and think, well, we first need to solve the climate crisis, and our destroyed environment could be second priority. Well, not everybody is on the same page with this. And technological innovation might be also not enough to really make the deficits of nuclear energy to bring it to a balance. So here we saw, obviously also from the V4 states, kind of like an approach to slow down renewable energy. This is just like a very neutral observation that the interests are still a bit different. And the main goal of the European Union with the European Green Deal is to speed up renewable energy, which we can also see with the Repower EU program, which I was mentioning earlier, cutting Russian gas and improving the renewable energy situation in Europe. Not every country is here on the same boat. I mentioned also in the beginning Hungary. Hungary is especially developing anti-European narratives. So I'm showing you here kind of like a picture from the current campaign. It's a Brüsseli Sankcjok, and the Brussels sanctions, and they are portrayed as like a nuclear bomb which will hit Europe. This is a very, very powerful message in a negative way, and all the election campaigns and all the media are showing these pictures, and it just is a portrait that the region, and especially in this case Hungary, is a struggle to build up a common denominator with the European Union. They, for example, Hungarians don't, or the government doesn't believe that the sanctions are needed. We would rather need kind of like a graveyard peace, which some of the German scientists would call it, and for the sake of our energy and inflation in Europe. So you just have very marginal space to come to a joint idea of how energy and climate policies should be made. And this is very difficult to handle as a European Union. So I was mentioning earlier these two mechanisms, and the EU was in the process of introducing various climate and energy legislations, including social protection packages to accelerate energy and climate policy development in the V4.
Raphael, I don't want to interrupt you, but we have about 15 or 20 more minutes.
I will be finished in a very short time from now on. We see the legislation. This is the just transition mechanism, for example, and here I will just very briefly show you how it works. So the European Union offers the adopters, or countries which have like kind of like hesitations, they will receive money, but this money is very needed from the member state, and you can, with a stick and carrot approach, bring them to come on board. For example, you say you need to sign the contract, you need to agree to the targets, otherwise you will receive only 50% of the amount. And this is the stick and carrot approach, which you will see then in my book. If it's published, I will explain it a bit more in detail in the book chapter, how also Fit for 55s has kind of conditionalities to convince member states. We have the TJTP. This is a bit rather smart mechanism where the EU is basically forcing governments to bring different stakeholders to one table to have like a fair discussion. So not only the government can decide, but also you need NGOs and scientists and other voices in this process. So here you are promoting this logic of appropriateness. All in all, we see that conditionality works. So the vetoes were dropped. So indeed, we can punish, if you want to say, member states for not to not being obliged to specific targets. But on the other hand, it's not consequent. You see a crisis pops up, such as the Ukraine, the Russian war in Ukraine, and governments are turning their back around and looking for other ways. So you also need kind of like this approach with this trust-based leadership, that we bring people also on the same boat with with trusted leadership. The outlook, we will witness that the existing tensions between the V4 and the European Union are the starting point for an escalation. So if we are seeing now that the energy prices are basically killing some of the citizens or are hurting in a bad way, I saw, for example, in Germany, people paying now energy bills in autumn like 3, 4, or 5 times of the amount of the past year. That will be already hard for like, let's say, a bit more advanced country in terms of wealth like Germany, but this will hit obviously Central and Eastern European states, which were obviously also afraid of social effects. So if we can't come to an agreement how we will deal with the situation, my prognosis is that future will be difficult also for the implementation of the Green Deal. You can find my latest booklet, which I co-audited with Kraft und Kurze, two professors at Andras University. We are talking about the opportunities and challenges. You can find it here on that link. I will share the slides after the presentation. A whole variety of impulses are playing into this, so it's very interesting. And now we can come to the discussion, and I apologize that we have a bit less time left, but unfortunately we started also a bit later. Maybe I would pass the ball to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Raphael. Very interesting. I see you've also put some questions over here for us to respond to. Might I begin just if there's anybody in the audience or any of us gathered here today who would like to pose a question to you, please raise your hand and let me know. I obviously have some questions. I'd like to ask, while others are thinking, I'd like to ask whether this logic of consequentialism is indeed contradictory or opposed to or set differently to the logic of appropriateness. Do these two forms of logic not just complement each other? Should we not be using both of them?
You're very right, but you're a kind of constructive person, right? So you see the bigger picture. So I would also see it that both things are possible, but some people would see it as blackmailing. This is the reality which is communicated from governments. Well, you don't trust us, so you don't want to give me the whole money. So this is a trust issue for some countries. And you can obviously argue in a complex scientific way, as we sometimes do, but the discourse is different.
And just since nobody else's hand is raised, but please interrupt me, anybody else if you want. Raphael, you mentioned the word trust, but might I put to you that trust is actually an irrelevant concept when it comes to state actors. Trust is really an individual concept between two individuals. When it comes to state actors, you have multiple people with multiple opinions and multiple trusts in those communities. In the case of states, millions of people. And to argue that one state trusts another state, I think is a bit disingenuous. States can't trust each other. That's not the basis upon which international relations are now given. Could be the basis when you have a state being run by a dictator. And one individual can trust another individual. One dictator, Belarus, can trust another dictator, Russia. But I think to argue that we need to build trust between states, I think is just bound to fail.
Again, I need to agree with you. So you are mentioning the concept of the prisoner's dilemma. So the prisoner's dilemma is not based on trust, basically. So you assume from game theory that if you have one country which will break the trust and they will escape, they get a reward. So in the case of climate change, governments believe, well, we are doomed anyways, so let's do it our way. I will make my pockets full with money. This is a problematic approach if you look at climate change or dimensions of global impact. If we're not working with trust, we are really doomed. So this is normative, but this is also important to understand. If we go only with game theory, we won't beat the climate. This is not possible. The climate will be bigger. And this is the reason why we need also trust-based negotiations. And I wanted to mention this. There's a lot of research basically coming up, which shows that this zero-sum negotiations is not only valuable. And I tried to show with this book chapter that indeed you are right. If we are seeing game theory and hard conditionalities, these conditionalities work. So to a point, Poland could be convinced with like hard conditionality to drop the veto, in Hungary as well. But as the opportunity came with the European Union being in hostage of Russia, those countries are turning their back. So you obviously cannot just go through hard conditionalities until 2050. If you will assume this is the reality, there is no point in pursuing the 2050 aims. Then that would be just fantasy. So we really need to change a bit of the dynamics, and this is where I would go back to Professor Maya and his quote, where he was mentioning that we really need to change the way how we communicate between politicians and also between scientists. And he was better formulating than I am, and that it requires a new interaction and intensive cooperation between economists and politicians. So maybe I would stick here with the economist. In the book, in this booklet which we were publishing, he was, for example, mentioning how economics developed. In the beginning, it was all about producing. So we were producing a lot of items. This was kind of like the holy grail of economics. Then people started to think of, okay, let's think about offer and demand. And then the whole economics discussion switched to offer and demand. And until now, these are basically the key theories for economics, but we need to include also social dimensions into it to change how economics are done. Obviously, we can be pessimistic about that this won't change. Economy won't change. International relations, game theory won't change. But if this doesn't change, we will have a lot of more floods and a lot of more heating in the world.
I agree, we're going to have a lot more floods, and climate change is a problem. But when we use the word game theory, it's not a theory by which one can either adhere to or not adhere to. Game theory is a description of the way the world works. And when we use the word governments, we use governments as in a strange way. So we use governments as a placeholder for an individual actor, but governments are not individual actors. Governments are multiple people. Yes. Who are accountable to multiple people down the run. And governments are like fires in the sense that the fire might remain the same, but the fire is constantly changing. Or a river might run the same path, but it's never the same river. Governments are constantly changing. And ultimately, you can't convince a government of anything because they will try and go back to their people, but ultimately it's the people, certainly in the European democracies, who drive forward the changes. And if local people don't really care, local people are more interested in jobs, understandably, more interested in being able to have a decent level of living, understandably. It doesn't matter what the European Union says to the Hungarian government. A politician cannot take something that his local people will vote him out of.
I see that differently. Here, I don't agree with you. Science is changing all the time. So game theory might be still a very realistic description of how the world works until new science is coming in convincing us from the opposite. So we really need to take new approaches. And I'm not only speaking about governance between two governments. We are speaking about multi-level governance, global governance. And here you are right. The governments are not making the decisions by its own entity. Maybe they also need the support or the advice of civil society in this country. You will have also the UN and other supranational organizations as an influencing actor. So what's the key message is here, that in the governance concept, we need the stakeholders to support the other stakeholders. So you are very right. If a system is corrupt inside, you can see it, for example, with a Chinese state. You won't be the one who's convincing China to leave their like authoritarian regime just because the European Union says so. But if, for example, different stakeholders are voicing their issues, you can also lead to change within a country. It was not successful, but if you see Hong Kong, what the Chinese did in Hong Kong, this was a scream and a shout out to democracy. Obviously, a lot of people would say China won't change in the next centuries, maybe rather in Iran, if you see system change and protests there. But you need to be aware of stakeholders in a country. And in, let's say, we speak about the global climate regime. So the global climate regime is the regime where the stakeholders cooperate globally with each other. The global climate regime needs to be stringent to make enough pressure on governments to change their approach, and basically in a way to break out of the game theory.
Please, anybody who would like to give a question, go for it. Obviously, I can keep going. I've got quite a few. I've got just two more notes. I don't know if you're aware of a very interesting debate that took place at the Oxford Union. Do you know what the Oxford Union is?
Not fully aware. Maybe you can set some context.
The Oxford Union, well, you know, Oxford University, it's the best university in the world, and they regularly run a debate. And this debate invites some of the most influential people in the world to debate a topic. And it's pretty influential. And this week, a comedian was invited to debate on the issue of wokeness, but he took it from a stance of climate change. And his argument was very simple. The United Kingdom is responsible for 2% of global greenhouse emissions. Actually, climate change is going to be decided not in Europe, but in Asia, Latin America, and partly Africa. And these are poor people. And these are poor people who don't really care about the issues you and I are talking about here. These are poor people who have struggles for food and jobs. How do we convince poor people that they cannot have electricity and a stove and better food and cheaper clothes and good transport? Perhaps, I think my point is this. Europe's focus on creating its own renewable energy is not going to make a big difference, certainly not according to the 2050 goals. Perhaps the money is better spent on new technologies that will transform developing countries.
But you also need to translate this. Just imagine climate change would be on the other side of your of the table, and you would try to make this rational argument. Well, climate change, we can't do it. We are too poor, or we have other problems. The other side would not take you seriously. So my point is here, we need to get an understanding of the urgency of the situation. So some climate movements like Fridays for Future, or in Germany, we have now something like Last Generation. Those people try to wake the urgency of the issue. And I agree with you. We as the rich Europeans, we definitely want change it by our own. But here we need to have like a bit of idealism, and it's not completely normative. It's just like also a theory in itself, like game theory is a theory in itself. We can only beat climate change if it's done collectively. If you have no social actor, no supranational organization which is putting up this pioneering or the lead, others would certainly not follow. And this makes sense also from a point of hard power. And this is where the European Union tried to step in as the United States were stepping out to show we are taking the lead, and we will have this spillover effect. So I can agree with you that game theory is a description in itself, but spillover effects are also a theory in itself, and they make also a lot of sense. So if you are seeing that, okay, on the one continent, this green concept is somewhat working, maybe we can start trying to make the change as well, also in India or in Asia. So, but if you don't have someone who's leading the charge, why should do the others? So there is a specific need of Europe with a special role in this. But I also agree with you, we cannot dismiss the problems which those people have. And this is where I would also point again to global governance. We need to be aware we are living in globalization. We need new tools to improve the situations of those countries. And if you would now take Jeffrey Sachs, this is one of the leading theorists in the field of sustainable development, he would argue we need to improve the economic growth in the first place to save people from poverty. This is what China did. China is an authoritarian state. I need to be very blunt here. In the 1990s, you had the massacre at the Tiananmen Square, and basically they destroyed a movement and killed a lot of students to achieve their kind of like authoritarian system. What they did after that, I think the approach was not morally right. This is far from normative, but what they did after that, they improved their economic growth and basically eradicated a lot of the most radical poverty. So what we need to do as well in those regions in Asia is to improve economic growth, but not with conducting murder or other kind of like approaches. We need to find a peaceful way how we bring stakeholders and voices in a country together. We need to help them improving their economic growth, that they can step out of poverty. And at the same time, we need to also think how to make this economic growth more green. Obviously now here in Europe, we have the better resources, so economic growth can be done with new technologies and renewable energy. But in some of the poorest areas in the world, you would still need at least partially old technology, because you can't often without existing infrastructure, you can't build immediately new infrastructure. So that would be too complex. So in some points, you still need to use the old resources to eradicate, let's say, poverty, but also not lose the bigger picture about climate change. And here I would make the stop. Sustainable development, and make no mistake, is not only the climate. Sustainable development, as I was mentioning it, it has this economic pillar, the social pillar, and the climate pillar. And what I also tell my students in the class, obviously climate change has a center stage for our generation, but we obviously cannot forget about the poverty in Asia, and we need to help those people as well. It's a huge task, but someone needs to pick up the lead.
Raphael, thank you so much for your discussion today. I hope the rest of the team enjoyed it. We've run out of time today. We will be back next month on another topic. And if you would like, please do sign up at the Everbright events or send us an email with your feedback. But until next time, thank you all very much.
I would show also my slide in the end. Thank you for the attention.